Hello everyone, I am back. Let's talk about comp and the Trials playlist. I have quite a bit to say here, and I'm not really sure how long this video is going to be, but I'm going to talk until I feel like I've covered everything I can think of in this brief period of time in relation to what I want to say, and I'm hoping I'm both broad enough yet concise enough, because these are two things that I feel really strongly about, especially in Destiny 2, and that is matchmaking and the health of the community in relation to that. I extremely wanted to avoid making this kind of video, seeing as how every other content creator has a cookie cutter style video about trials and whatever involving, their distaste for it. But this is from a different perspective, and I will convey my message in this video very, very quickly and clearly right now. I prefer the survival or competitive playlist over Trials of Osiris. I am of the opinion that there's a requirement for changes in both playlists in order for either of them to succeed going forward, even if that means having a smidge of life. And for archival purposes, this is being recorded in Season 10, also known as Season of the Worthy. This is the first season that Trials of Osiris has returned or has even been in Destiny 2. In year 1, it was Trials of the Nine, if you weren't around for that. Let's open up the can of worms and address the big alarming point that the predictable Destiny community will be very outraged about. And that's why I don't really like Trials of Osiris or Trials of the Nine or Trials as a concept or game mode. Even though I estimate I've covered this, it has to be an unquantifiable amount of times in streaming videos, but I'm going to give the hard, cold bullet points here and let you digest that how you decide. I feel it's not entirely competitive once you abstract the fireteam requirement, in parentheses, no matchmaking. That is, you cannot queue into less or more than 3 players in your fireteam. When we remove this aspect, we just have a typical casual match of a non-respawn game mode with practically no objective until 2 minutes have elapsed, which in the current state of the game happens more often than not. Typically in a non-respawn game mode, matches are either very, very slow and they come down to the clock every time, or they're designed to be a swift, brutal, and punishing for mistakes event, all of which definitely define the elimination game mode, but due to the nature of things, this is not a great format in general outside of a tournament setting. Especially Destiny, but Destiny tournaments lol. Now why especially Destiny? There's a single word that you can use to define this, and that's momentum. Momentum is exponentially more important in Destiny due to supers being in the game, and your ability regen only happening while you're alive. These are all core components of success in Destiny, which is utilizing your entire toolkit that you have at your disposal. When you have a non-respawn game mode, and there's 3 up on the enemy team, and they have control of 2 orbs of your teammates, they're just going to sit there and play for their super, and they're going to play the clock. I think this is best defined as passive momentum, as in you're doing literally nothing and gaining what could be translated into copious amounts of momentum for doing so. Again, we're talking super energy, ability energy. However, this does not go without noting that you are theoretically running a risk of a very skilled player performing a downright clutch and reversing that momentum entirely in their favor. And not even from a game mechanic standpoint, just from a morale standpoint. And that's something that should really be taken into consideration. However, I want to get back on the topic of why this isn't exactly competitive, and what I mean by it's not even a great display of competition outside of a tournament setting. Usually in tournaments, matches are played in sets of best of X, and what this means is best of 3, best of 5, best of 7, best of 9, best of 11, so on and so forth as you get further into the bracket. Typically, championship matches are around best of 7 or best of 9 sets, depending on what is being played, and so on and so forth. The reason all matches aren't best of 1s and it's like, who's better GL, it should only be 1 match, is because it doesn't display who is a consistent team. And we can take Trials into context with this. Now, I understand Trials isn't designed to emulate a tournament setting, but I feel that non-respawn as a whole is not a great kind of thing for competition, especially in Destiny, especially in a game mode or Trials activity that punishes you for losing very, very, very aggressively in a game where the team who gets the first round almost always wins. I'm pretty sure. That's like the statistic. I don't know. I have no backing on this, I'm going to be honest with you guys, but this is my experience. Now, if we want to take a page out of another book here, we could look at Quake, which has 1v1 duels, which unironically fits the agenda of Destiny competition standards when we talk about tournament play down to the history, especially in Destiny 2, where Destiny 2 tournaments were, and I think still are, entirely based on Clash, which is just a stand-up deathmatch. Now, the reason I make this comparison is because Quake and Destiny both have the similar format of it's a straight-up deathmatch played on different maps. The problem with Destiny is you can play the same maps or different maps the exact same way because there are weapons, special weapons is mainly what I'm referring to, that have an intangible value of assistance when using them, e.g. aim assistance or bullet magnetism. Ultimately, the better team is 99% of the time going to win, but in an elimination game mode setting, where there's no rule restrictions, you can have things like Antaeus wards take a round for a team, or possibly 2 rounds, or even a 3rd round because they get their super in the 1st round for sliding around and tanking bullets. Again, this translates into the momentum thing, and one and done with an elim non-respawn, it's just not enjoyable to me personally, and I feel like it's not competitive. I want to point out here that I'm speaking subjectively entirely throughout this video, and very few points should be taken as objective. So, deal with that as you want. But me disliking Trials because its elimination is such a tired and beat up argument, I'm just going to end the point right here, and I'm going to move on to what I feel like could be improved upon in order to expand the longevity of the life, or just make it less redundant to play week in and week out. Let's talk about rewards. The rewards aren't too awful, and I feel that the reward set was a fine reintroduction of Trials of Osiris into Destiny 2. I do know in a recent blog post they've mentioned rewards, and they've mentioned upping the ante on tokens received for further win passages of 3, 5, 7 flawless, and more Masterwork materials, but as everyone has said as well, I would like to see something like Adept Weapons added, which they've conveniently also provided us a blueprint of what they're working on in regards to that. So in the reward front, I feel that in the later seasons there's going to be new guns, and they're going to continue on, and it's going to be happy and dandy, which will reduce the redundancy. Now that the easy stuff's out of the way, let's get into the real problem and the biggest fish to fry in this video. The duration that Trials is accessible during the week. Trials was originally a weekend activity where ideally you and a couple friends would squad up with the intentions of winning like 7 matches without a loss and making it to the lighthouse for your flawless reward, and it was a fun thing. There were moments of anger and happiness and awe where your friends would clutch up or you guys would make it, super easy that week. The only thing different now is that Trials is on for way too long. It extends beyond the point of a fun weekend bash, and it's incredibly invasive on the other aspects of PvP and the community as a whole. I'm not necessarily speaking from the perspective of Trials of Osiris haters' sides, but rather just an average Joe who spends between 8 and 16 hours a week on the game and either wants to kick back, possibly doesn't have a team, or just really doesn't have much interest in Trials due to not taking the game incredibly seriously, which is the most likely scenario here whether we like it or not. If we really want to get deep into this point, and I feel like this is necessary, this is incredibly harmful to the ecosystem of content creation, especially the live streaming department where you have the top 80 streams, all similarly titled in all capital letters, free Trials carries with little to no diverse content. The chat is empty, and you would almost be led to believe that the streamer was viewbotting. Until the words are uttered, we're going to go ahead and start another raffle. Please type !raffle in the chat if you guys want to get in and play a card. You get the point. This is both incredibly demeaning and demotivating to other content creators, especially the PvE content creators, which is like the large chunk of the game, but also incredibly confusing for a new player who might want to see what like the big creators are doing or like what's the thing, only to see the top of the Twitch directory filled with a bunch of random Trials carry streams that are all almost congruently named. To summarize, this is what I mean by it's pretty invasive. Let's see about keeping it to the weekends, perhaps. Now, while you're typing in the comments, yes, I know who you are. You can be typing in the comments right now, well, sidezz. The carry culture is ingrained in the game now. It's actually a part of the game. And I know that I'm typically known as someone who has a bone to pick with this kind of thing, but this is safe for a different video. And I'm speaking pretty objectively about this at this point. It's hard to not admit that Trials being on for as long as it is not pretty harmful to the other circles of content creation, seeing as how PvP in Destiny isn't even like the central focus. It's quite rough. Now that that beast is out of the way, let's talk about the main topic here, the competitive playlist. What could be done about it, and why you should play it over Trials if you either A, dislike Trials and or Elimination as a whole, B, don't really have anything to do in Trials but you still want to play with your friendos, C, want to improve without needing a squad. I'll start off with why I like the competitive playlist more than Trials, and it's quite simple. Semi-respawn life system allows for a similar feel of Trials, putting worth behind every life, but also minimizing the fluke victories in rounds. For example, a random Antea slide tanks a sniper headshot from behind, allowing for more consistent teams to succeed more often than not. However, this is only one slice of the pizza pie, and there's plenty more toppings to come, my friends. I'm sorry, I guess that was a little cheesy. Anyway, let's talk about the game modes and the transition from Variant 4v4 to Survival 3v3 in the comp playlist. In the September 5th, 2019 This Week at Bungie blog post, link in the description, it was mentioned that after Season of Opulence, when Shadowkeep launches, the competitive playlist will be replaced with a 3v3 survival playlist and a freelance solo queue only 3v3 survival playlist to go along with that. I do feel like this change was met with mixed feelings, but the majority of people were definitely still nostalgia blinded by Trials and Destiny 1, and so of course, just like everything else preceding this, they got what they wanted, because that's how it works. Personally, I preferred the 4v4 variant competitive playlist, which conveniently brings me to my next point, the possibility of a variant competitive playlist, seeing that Trials is a thing now. Let's be real, guys. People only gave a fuck that it was 3v3 and survival because they wanted elimination and they wanted Trials. They got theirs, I want mine now. Now, you're hearing me use this word a lot, variant. What do I mean by it? What does it mean? Variant is used to describe a non-singular game mode playlist, typically. This means Clash, Zone Control, King of the Hill, Capture the Flag, maybe Survival, maybe Countdown, maybe Elim, maybe Breakthrough if it doesn't still suck balls. Whereas non-variant comparatively is like the Survival playlist, like Trials of Osiris, like the Control playlist, like Iron Banner. The big thing with how dominant special weapons are in the sandbox right now, as to how powerful things are right now, would we keep it 3 versus 3 or would we want it to be 4v4? Now, and I bring this topic up because all of these sound fine until you hit Capture the Flag and Breakthrough. These sound a little iffy when we talk about these two game modes in a 3v3 standpoint, because you have a 1-1-1 lane density, seeing as how most maps in Destiny 2 are 3-lane maps. If you like have a little bit more competitive experience, you can kind of see where I'm getting with this. But let's be real, boys. We still have to get these game modes into the game, and it's probably never going to happen. But it's a hill I'll die on. And I'm not saying that these game modes like King of the Hill, Capture the Flag could be implemented tomorrow with no errors or anything like that. Of course, you know, there's the age-old argument of, oh, why doesn't a Titan just bubble on the hill? Why don't you run 4 Sentinels? And, of course, you know, that could be a viable strategy. But the thing is, we would probably have a little bit more balanced around these kind of things. And in any case, people would develop strategies for countering this. E.g. having a guaranteed bubble pop on the team, like a Nova or a Thunder Crash. I'm gonna eat dirt for this one, but it's kind of like saying I have a bunch of hit scan characters in Overwatch on my team, and they have a Reinhardt shield. What do I do? You know what I mean? But these are just things to think about. Obviously, this is all hearsay, and I'm not even a blip on Bungie's radar, so I don't expect anything to come of this video. I would just kind of like to get the conversation going, especially because I feel very strongly about this, and I feel like this kind of stuff in the competitive playlist could be a lot of fun and could really, really, really deviate from my quick play stomping all day long and could just be something fun to do, even without rewards. And I'm just going to touch a little briefly on this, since I feel wrong bringing up the game mode discussion without giving my suggestions or thoughts on how I would structure these game modes and how I think they should be changed for competitive play. So I'll get into that, and then after that I'm going to get into rewards. And I'm going to leave like text on the screen over the gameplay while I'm talking about this stuff, because it might be a little tough to keep track of me talking about all these different game mode stuff things. So I'll just do that for sake of conveniency. I also compiled like a map list of every map in Destiny 2 and what game modes I would like to see played on them, but this is like more nitpicky stuff, and I'll probably just flash a little image of that or a rubric or something. Anyway, let's get into how I would structure these game modes. Starting with Clash, 8 to 15 minutes of game time. I'm not sure which, because some people would feel like 15 minutes is too long. No score limit, respawn timer of 5 seconds, a sudden death of 60 seconds, a single non-group heavy spawn every 4 minutes, that means one player can pick up the crate, and there is a suicide penalty of -1 frag from the team if you suicide. Moving on to zone control, I would like to see 150 points or 15 minutes, which is mathematically not possible, and you'll see why, or it's incredibly unlikely. 1 point per flag per 3 seconds of live game time. Contested, which is like if there's two different players, a different team standing on the flag, do not give score. 7-second flag capture time. Uncontested defender touch resets cap progress. That means if the offending player has put 60% progress on the flag and a defender touches the flag and there's no one else on that flag, it will be reset to 0%. The respawn timer of 7 seconds, a sudden death of 30 seconds, and a single non-group heavy spawn every 3 minutes. Moving on from that, we'll go to capture the flag and how I would ideally like to see it. It is 5 caps or 15 minutes, whichever comes first. 1 point per flag capture. A flag return timer. I would prefer this to be disabled, but 5 seconds. I'm not really a huge fan of flag resets. What this means is if you stand you stand near the flag or hold X on it or something like that, or E or whatever your interact key is, to send it back to your base immediately. The flag reset timer of 15 seconds, that is a period where if a player does not interact with that flag and it's remained in the game world untouched by a player for 15 seconds, it will automatically teleport back to the flag base. A sudden death of 30 seconds and a respawn timer of 7 seconds, and a single non-group heavy spawn every 3 minutes. And there would be some flag carrier traits specific to people carrying the flag, and that is no ability movement, no class abilities, no melee, no super, and no sprint. But the no sprint could be up for debate, seeing as how it's Destiny 2 and people die incredibly quickly. Moving on, we're going to go something a little bit more simple, which is King of the Hill. 300 points or 15 minutes, whichever comes first. 1 point per second of uncontested hill time based on the game clock. This equates out to 5 minutes of uncontested hill time to win. No orbs of light, debatable since this is the breaking the Destiny formula, and no external super generation, so like no pump action, no remote connection, and is also debatable since this is breaking the Destiny formula. However, frags and intellect would count towards that. The respawn timer of 7 seconds, a hill lifetime of 120 seconds or 2 minutes, so that means it moves to a different location every 120 seconds, and a single non-group heavy spawn every 3 minutes. And the heavy would preferably spawn on the other side of the map from the hill. So an oddball, which is just a neutral objective which a player has to hold at all times in order to gain score, would be very similar to King of the Hill with 300 points or 15 minutes, whichever comes first. 1 point per second of ball control based on the time clock. No orbs of light, no external super generation, same concept as King of the Hill. Respawn timer of 7 seconds, a single non-group heavy spawn every 3 minutes. And the ball carrier traits would be the same as a flag carrier, which is no ability movement, no class abilities, no melee, no super, no sprint. Easy. Now breakthroughs where it's going to get a little complex, and I'll try my best to explain this how I can. So, 2 different rule sets that could be plausible. The second one is the most likely, but I'll get into the first one. The first one is more a remnant of a game mode called Stopwatch, also known as 2CP from Overwatch. And that is the fastest completion or the highest score. And what that looks like is it has multiple sets, and a set is consisted of both teams attacking and defending 1 time each. The way this works is the first to 3 set wins is the victor of the match. You have 4 minutes to capture the first point, 4 more minutes to capture the second point. Progress is stored if the point is successfully defended, and what that means is if the offensive team got to 63% on point B, the defending team, when they're on offense, would have to pass 63%, and if they do, it's an immediate win for them in that set. And if both points are captured, the second offending team has to beat Team A's completion time, so if it took Team A 6 minutes and 12 seconds, Team B has to beat 6 minutes and 12 seconds, or they lose that set. This is a little more complex, and it will never happen in Destiny. I just wanted to throw it out there. The one that's more likely is just the breakthrough rule set, which is capping 1 point gives 1 point. Successful defense gives 0 points. And that's it. First to 5. And to finally top all of this game mode nonsense talk off, we'll end up with Countdown, which is a best of 9 that is first to 5 points. A round timer of 2 minutes or 120 seconds, whichever you prefer. No heavy ammo spawns at all. There's a 5-second bomb plant time, a 7.5 or 7.5 second defuse time, 45-second bomb fuse, and 1 respawn per round. Not using the respawn token system, it's more like a limited trials respawn system. So if you die, you can only be revived 1 time per round. That same player could revive 3 other people though. Moving on from this small bit, let's talk about rewards. I hold a pretty off-center opinion in regards to rewards from the competitive playlist. Mainly speaking, I feel like the incentive to play comp is just because you find the playlist fun. At least that's why I personally play it, both solo queue and with friends. I generally do find it fun to have like these competitive matches and these close matches where it comes out like 4-3, because it's just a fun environment, you know, as long as people don't get salty and there's no like teabagging or whatever, and they treat it in good fun. It's really enjoyable for me. And the rewards are just it's the cherry on top of the cake, really, or whatever you put cherries on. I did like the concept of pinnacle weapons, but I think the Destiny community just isn't quite ready for this kind of thing, which is very exclusive. I also feel like it was a rich get richer scenario, so I understand why they were shelved or shot in the head and thrown into a ditch to bleed out. But in any case, I think that providing masterwork materials, the current powerful rewards that it spams you when you first go through a season, rank ups of glory, that's phenomenal. I would like to see enhanced mods drop from it as well, just for like playing or something like that. I actually had an idea I brought up with my stream chat at one point, which was this concept similar to World of Warcraft's conquest system right now, where it's like if you gained X glory points, we'll say for all intents and purposes every 2100 glory points gained, so it doesn't matter if you get to 1900 and reset to 0, the next 300 points you get will give you this reward, or maybe even 5500 glory points gained in a season. You were offered 1 item where you could redeem it for 1 guaranteed roll of a normally acquirable weapon. So we're speaking things like forge weapons, spare rations, dire promise, mindbender's ambition, trials weapons, things that you could feasibly obtain at the current moment. You couldn't ask for like a Fate of All Fools or something like that. In the grand scheme of things, this seems like a pretty garbage reward, but it does allow you to consistently grind out things that might be off rotation, like a mindbender's, like a spare rations, and stuff like that. And it wouldn't really surprise me if you saw some slightly above average teams pulling around 3 to 4 of these rewards a week. And if you average that out across 3 months in a season, that's pretty big incentive to just play comp. You get better, you have fun, and you get a guaranteed roll of a weapon. Instead of sitting here and spending, 4,500 legendary shards to hope you get 1 dire promise, you can play comp for 3 hours, gain your points, and get a guaranteed roll. And this would, of course, ideally for me, would be repeatable as many times as you desire, or else it would kind of defeat the purpose. This is all I really have to say in regards to the rewards of the competitive playlist. I don't feel like the rewards are awful by any means, but their mediocrity definitely increases as you get later into the season, due to light leveling not being quite as important for PvE content, thus rendering the very aggressive stream of powerful gear objectively useless. Hope to see this one improved upon a little bit in the future. It would be pretty dope. A final point I want to bring up about the competitive playlist is the matchmaking. I don't actually understand how the matchmaking works, but I almost just kind of want to see the glory rank disappear. I don't think Destiny was ready for a ranking system, nor do I feel like it really fits. I was a massive advocate for a ranking system back in Season 1 and Season 2 when I took the game seriously and thought I was competitive, but after seeing the different iterations and living through them and playing through them, it just seems like a sparkly Valor rank at this point that you can lose some of your ranking points. I feel that 5500 no longer has anywhere near the weight nor worth it used to have, and it kind of feels like everyone is at 5500 these days, which is either for better or for worse. In any case, I just feel like this ranking system has objectively failed, I guess. I feel like at the beginning it was somewhat worth something, but it feels more like a ladder than a true competitive ranking system. And I just don't think that the Destiny community is ready for it. I think I should probably start wrapping things up here since this was a pretty chunky video to kind of reprise since I've been grinding other stuff recently. I want to start my finish by making my agenda here very clear so you don't have to do some guesswork as if I was writing literature or something. I am heavily pushing an agenda of you should play comp if you don't need anything from Trials, but still feel like the Trials experience or feel like enjoying the Trials experience because it's functionally the same thing, seeing with how random matchmaking seems to be from time to time. I avoided talking about this topic for this whole video, and I'm afraid I've hit the wall where I do need to address it. I want to avoid the cheating situation as much as possible, but something to consider is that there are recovery services that will, do recoveries or live carry people while cheating to their flawless card, and this is a market that's almost been entirely diminished with the pinnacle weapons just not being as good as they used to be, and Trials having much more desirable loot as a whole because it's viewed as more prestigious or something. So the odds that you run into cheaters in comp is probably a little bit lower than I would say in Trials, but I reckon everything is relative, and with there being a much larger player base in Trials, I think that the odds that you run into a cheater in either one is probably the same, but I find myself not running into cheaters in comp nearly as much unless I'm playing like freelance on a weekday in the morning. But that could be like some guy from China or something cheating on that account for all I know. They often are pretty laggy, but just some thoughts to think about really. And something else is, and I don't tend to ask a favor in my videos, but I will this time. If the ideas that I've presented or the ideology or anything like that I've presented in this video has even remotely interested you, maybe 4v4 comp coming back, or keeping it 3v3 but adding these objective game modes, or maybe keeping what we have already and just giving us back like Clash and Control and comp, if that seems like something that's a little tasty to you, please do bring it up to your friends. You don't even have to share this video. This video is atrociously long. And so I would never expect anyone to, share this to their friends, be like, oh, watch this video, lol. And, because watching a video that's 30 minutes long isn't just it's not like just something you do on your lunch break at work or whatever, right? But definitely do push the idea to your friends. Like maybe you guys are playing Trials and you guys are bored, like, oh man, we match hackers for the 6th time in a row. This game mode shit. And maybe you could push the idea like, hey, we should just go to comp, it's kind of the same thing, just with a couple extra lives. I saw this video by this weird guy who rambled for 30 minutes straight, and, he pointed a lot of ideas, and I kind of agree with them, or I disagree with them, or I agree with this and disagree with this, and, converse about it, because that's how you really get change going. I don't really expect this video to pop off or anything like that. I just make it for me so that it's off my chest, but it would mean a ton if you guys could kind of get the conversation going if this does interest you a little bit, because it's probably the one thing I care the most about in this game is the competitive playlist and playing with friends, stuff like that. I like quick play and stuff like that, but nothing will ever come close to the surface of the fun that I had playing game battles or the MLG playlist with my friends when I was in middle and high school. So this is a possible reprisal of that as well. although it'll never be the same. In any case, I've said what I have to say, and I'm pretty tapped out. I'm working on this video for like 10 hours straight to wrap it up. Appreciate you if you've watched all 30 minutes and 31 minutes or whatever it's going to turn out to be. It really does mean a ton to me. And we'll catch you guys later with a couple live commentaries later on. Later, dudes.